Ladies and gents, boys and girls, TGIF, what is going on? Friday, August the 11th, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Chris Phillips here of the Daily Crow of the Spurs Up Show. We are rocking and rolling here on this Friday. I see John Edward, Hunter Kelly, GA, Robbie Davis, Brendan M, Xavier, C. Youngblood, Peyton Smith. Happy Friday, my friend. Appreciate you sending those well wishes, and thank y'all all so much for tuning in. Also, those who are in the Big Cock Club Discord, head over to the TDC Questions channel, the TDC Questions channel, to be sure your questions are answered there. Again, guys, we are rocking, we are rolling, very exciting stuff, very pumped up to be talking with each and every single one of you here on this Friday. Tons to get into, guys. Of course, we have our Q&A Power Hour upcoming in hour number 3. We'll take your questions, your comments, your calls as well at 843-790-3377. And a bit of an extended Q&A Power Hour today because we're going to move up Jake Crane in hour number 2 to 1 o'clock instead of 1:15. So I know that I've been shortchanging you guys a little bit on the Q&A Power Hour. So I'm putting it on you all to carry the weight for about an hour and a half today. But it's going to be a lot of fun as, again, we take your questions, comments, calls. Jake Crane, again, will join us. We'll talk all things Gamecocks, SEC, probably some fall camp as well. We'll dive into fall camp storylines all across college football. Really excited to talk with Jake. Speaking of bringing the heat, that is a guy that always brings it on our airwaves. Never have to worry about Jake Crane being fired up to talk all things college football. And then, of course, in hour number 1, we finalize, or we conclude, I should say, talking about the Gamecocks defensive line heading into the 2023 football season. Again, guys, thank you all so much for tuning in. Truly do appreciate it. It has been a very exciting last 24 hours or so. Last night, I had a great conversation with my good friend Brett Ciancia of Pick 6 Previews. That will actually drop the week of week 0, of course. No TDC that week, but we will have tons of fantastic interviews lined up with you all. Also exciting news, guys, over at tsus.store and or thespursupshow.com. We officially have hats on the store. Beamer Ball hats are on the store right now. We are getting the Beamer Rattler line as well as Clem Sucks up on the store later today. And really exciting stuff. And you'll see me rocking this one next week. So we've got, of course, the black with the white front panel. We've got black on black, of course, brand new that we are rolling out. And again, you'll see me rocking this one probably Monday of next week. We have got this hat right here. White front panel, camo on the bill and the back mesh here. So really, really cool stuff. Really excited for you guys to see that. I'll probably post it on social media later today. I should be getting the hat in the mail either today or tomorrow. Either way, really, really pumped to add this new collection, this new line, and it will be available for the Beamer Ball line, Beamer Rattler, and Clem Sucks as well. So again, we're adding new products to tsus.store. Also, guys, and this is something that I will have more details on in the coming weeks as we get closer to the 2023 college football season, the closer to toe actually meeting leather. I am very proud and excited to announce that we have added a new business partner for the 2023 football season and beyond. We've actually agreed a year-long contract, a year-long agreement, as MyBookie has become the newest business partner and sponsor, if you will, of the Spurs Up Show. Very, very excited. Of course, I told you guys that gambling content is going to become a much bigger piece of what we do here with TSUS. And of course, we have our friends over at Prize Picks. Still highly encourage you to use them, but they are great for prop plays and over-unders and what have you with specific players. MyBookie is going to serve as our sportsbook sponsor. So when I give bets on spreads, on over-under totals, on win totals, on Heisman odds, whatever it might be, my bookie will be the place to go. So again, guys, we struck a deal this morning. It'll go into full effect in the next couple of weeks. We'll have the ad read on the show, but really, really excited to bring on my bookie as the newest business partner and sponsor of the Spurs Up Show. Again, of course, anytime we're adding new partners, new sponsors, that means that the business is healthy. Really exciting stuff. Also, we have a new partner we'll begin to roll out next week as well, our friends over at Game Time, which is a ticket buying app. You guys will be able to get $20 off of tickets using a promo code. So that's exciting as well. Things, obviously, as you can tell, are ramping up as we get into the 2023 football season. So again, Q&A Power Hour in hour number 3. We've got Jake Crane coming in hour number 2. We've got new things on the store. We've got new business partners. But in this first hour, we're talking all things Gamecocks football. Let me point out really quickly, by the way, we will get into fall camp rumors, storylines. We've all heard the news by now with Trey Knox, a possible sprain, an MCL sprain is what it sounds like. Could miss a couple of weeks. We'll talk more on that later in the show. But for now, we conclude our conversation talking Gamecocks defensive line. What will spell success for South Carolina's defensive line in year 1 of the Travian Robertson era as he takes over as defensive line coach? And the low-hanging fruit, guys, with this group, the low-hanging fruit, statistically, South Carolina finished 116th nationally in rushing defense a season ago, allowing 198 yards per game. When you look at what South Carolina has available to them on their roster, I think it is important to keep realistic expectations for this group going into this fall. With that being said, the thing that I keep going back to is this. You know, we've heard about year 3 being the jumping point. It's a huge year for Shane Beamer. Year 3, if coaches are going to pop, year 3 is when they do it. Year 3 is important for all parties, not just Shane Beamer. Year 3 is massively important for third-year defensive coordinator Clayton White. And in the first 2 years, South Carolina has not even finished within the top 90 in rushing offense or defense, but we're talking, of course, defense specifically here. Have not finished inside the top 90 in rushing defense. Guys, you don't have to be that good to finish inside the top 90. I don't think that's asking too much. And if it is, we're in a really sad place when it comes to our defensive front. I can't label this season a success for the Gamecocks defensive front if they can't finish in the top 90 in rushing defense. You know, I almost put just top 100. Just get in the top 100 because you finished 116th last season. But I think top 90 should be achievable. I think top 90 should be doable. When you look at what South Carolina had in this group, year 1 of Shane Beamer, you look at last year, you look at what they returned, and certainly there are question marks, certainly there are holes, but is just being top 100 good enough? Is being painfully below average and finishing 12th or 13th, is finishing 11th or worse in the SEC in rush defense for the 6th consecutive season? Is that good enough? I think South Carolina should strive for more when it comes to this unit. I think this unit should strive to be top 90. And again, that's not even a crazy finish. You're not all that great with a top 90 finish, but at least at that point in year 1 of Travian Robertson, at least you feel like you're taking excuse me, you're taking baby steps forward. With that being said, I mentioned top 90 nationally. How about 10th or better in the SEC? You guys have heard the stat many times from me by now. South Carolina has finished 11th or worse in the SEC in rush defense the past 5 seasons. It's been since 2017. That is the last time the Gamecocks finished 10th or better in rushing defense. That has to end. And again, you don't have to be elite to finish 10th or better. You know how average you can be and finish 10th in rushing defense? Top 90 nationally, 10th or better in the SEC. I think that's doable, and I think that's what this group should strive for. When it comes to rushing the passer, we all know this is going to be a point of emphasis, especially early on in this season when you face the likes of Drake May, Carson Beck, Joe Milton, Will Rogers. The list goes on and on. South Carolina had 20 sacks a season ago, and while they do lose Jordan Birch to Oregon, Gilbert Edmond to Florida State, I think this pass rush can be, and it should be, improved with the return of Jordan Strawn from injury, right? Missed basically the entire year a season ago. The addition of Jatius Gear from Syracuse, who had 3.5 sacks for the Orange a season ago. I think 26 or more sacks should be the goal. And that will most certainly spell a successful season. Is this a lofty expectation? Yes, it is. Is this a lofty goal? Yes, it is. But I think with Travian Robertson carrying over what he learned from Brad Lowing in regards to how to attack the quarterback, how pass rush is a science. It's not just as simple as, well, line up and pin your ears back and go get them. It's not that simple. I think Travian Robertson, using that experience that he had under Brad Lowing, getting to sit down guys and talk pass rush with Brad Lowing, it was such a delight. It was such a treat. It was such a blessing to have those experiences because I learned there are so many complexities and so many things that go into a great pass rush. A lot of it is effort. A lot of it is film study. A lot of it is the way you position guys and you stunt guys and you twist guys. And I think having Travian Robertson, the pass rush should improve because he's going to implement those things that he learned from the late, great Brad Lowing. And so with that being said, you had 20 sacks last year. I think bumping that number up to 26 or more is doable for South Carolina. Speaking of sacks, as we move to talking more individual players, Jordan Strawn and Jatius Gear. Is it Jatius? Is it Jatius? I've heard different pronunciations. I'm going to go with Jatius Gear. I watched the Syracuse video, and they called him Jatius Gear. So I'm going to go with that. Either way, Jordan Strawn, Jatius Gear off the edges. I like that duo. And I think both of those players, I think it's going to be a competition between those two. Who's going to lead this football team in sacks? I'll beat you to the quarterback. That should be the game that those two gentlemen play. I think 5 or more sacks for each of them, I think is a realistic goal, and I think that's something that can be achieved. I think Jordan Strawn, guys, we were talking about him this time last year being the lead sack guy for South Carolina. I think it's very doable, very achievable. I think Jordan Strawn, he led all of FBS in sacks. Back in 2020 with 10.5, that was a 10-game season, by the way. I think Jordan Strawn can be an 8, 9, maybe even a double-digit sack guy. Yet again, I think Gear can be a 6, 7, maybe 8 sack guy. And if you can do that, that is a very solid pass rush for the Gamecocks this season. But at minimum, Strawn, Gear, Both of those guys having 5 sacks apiece individually at minimum. Need that from both of them to call this season a success for the pass rush specifically. This group also needs Tonka Hemingway to live up to his all-SEC billing. You know, it's I don't know why it's happening. Maybe it's because he wasn't really a flashy player, and I think most would probably look and say, well, I don't know that he really lived up to his 5-star billing either. You know, because all the focus is on Jordan Burch, Gilbert Edmond, those guys departing, you know, the abruptness with which Jordan Burch left and hitting the portal. Of course, you know, Zach Pickens left via the NFL draft, which is how you'd prefer to see them leave. But Zach Pickens, you know, a guy nobody talks about his departure. Nobody talks about the fact that South Carolina surrendered 198 yards per game on the ground last year with Zach Pickens in the middle. And so while Tonka Hemingway put up really, really nice stats last year, 8 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, while he put up really nice numbers, now it's all on Tonka. It's like you're the feature guy. There is no Zach Pickens that defenses are now accounting for. And Tonka Hemingway fill into that role and make this season his best at South Carolina. We know he's capable. I would say there's a good chance that it happens. I think Tonka Hemingway is a legitimate baller. I think he's a legitimate ball player. He's a legitimate force in the middle, and he has the athleticism to do a number of different things for South Carolina. I think the way that Travian Robertson's going to use him is going to be really fun to watch. But now it's all on Tonka, right? There's no Zach Pickens. There's nobody else. It's on you. Can he live up to that all-SEC billing? He must for this season to be considered a success for the Gamecocks defensive front. The biggest thing Tonka needs, though, is help. Guys like Alex Huntley, Elijah Davis, they need to become a force in the middle. You know, Boogie Huntley was a really, really nice pickup in recruiting. 4-star prospect out of Hammond, right there with Jordan Burch. Has he lived up to the expectations set up for him? I think he's been a solid player, but I think he can take the next step. I think there's more in the tank when it comes to Boogie Huntley. And then Elijah Davis, we got flashes from him in the spring game. Big body dude, physical. Showed that athleticism and speed, getting in the backfield a couple of times. As we mentioned, there's no more Zach Pickens. So who's going to step up and fill in that role next to Tonka of being a force in the middle? Because if you're weak in the middle, guys, you don't have a chance to stop the run. Alex Huntley, Elijah Davis, those are the top 2 guys that I look at and say, okay, it's your time to shine. It's your time to step up and fill in this role. Both men are capable. They give you that girth, that size you need in the middle, but we haven't seen it from them. Boogie Huntley's been part of D-lines that have not been very good, and Elijah Davis has never taken a snap at this level. Granted, he was the number 1 player, or number 1 defensive tackle, I should say, coming out of junior college. So you feel like he's potential, he's capable of doing so. You feel like he's more than capable of doing so. Can one of or both of those players step up for you? Speaking of guys stepping up, finally you look to the edge. You really look all across this defensive line. The defensive line, guys, is very similar to the offensive line, in which for the offensive line to have success, sure, there's newcomers, there's freshmen, but a lot of it's going to hinge on guys who have been at South Carolina for a bit, they've been at South Carolina for a while, playing their best football. There's no other way about it. Stepping up, playing their best football. Guys who maybe for 3 or 4 years have been average at best, stepping up their game. That's what this group needs as well. Yes, there are newcomers, you know, a guy like Desmond Umeozulu, who we'll get to in just a second. But I look at guys more so like a Nick Barrett, a TJ Sanders, a Terrell Dawkins off the edge, the NC State transfer, a Tyreek Johnson, who's literally been at South Carolina since 2017, was part of Will Muschamp's first signing class. Just to give you an idea how long he's been in Columbia. Guys like that who have been on campus literally forever. And that we've heard Shane Beamer, we've heard Clayton White, we heard Jimmy Lindsey, and I'm sure we'll hear Travian Robertson say, hey, that guy's got potential. We feel good about those guys. All we heard about last summer was how good Nick Barrett and TJ Sanders were and how they felt so great about the depth at D-tackle. D-tackle's the strength of the football team. And it didn't pan out on the field. You need some of these guys, again, you look at newcomers and, them making a splash, but how about some dudes who have been on campus who should be playing at a higher level? How about those guys? Those guys who, for whatever reason, just have not contributed at a high level. How about them stepping up and making plays? You need more of that from this group. You got to get more of it because there's talent in there. We feel like there is. We feel like there's talent. But for whatever reason, it just hasn't panned out. And finally, guys, when you talk success for the Gamecocks defensive line, and I talked about newcomers, and there's one specifically, freshman Desmond Umeozulu, you need him to shine. That is a guy you need to come in, I would argue, play immediately and be an impact guy for you. South Carolina, one of their biggest problem areas, I would say probably the problem area on the defensive front, because the front four, I think you could do a lot worse than Strawn and Gear at the edges and Huntley and Hemingway in the middle. I think you could do much worse. Depth is a great concern for this unit. Depth is a major, major concern. And so having a guy like a Desmond Umeozulu, a Xavier McLeod inside, we haven't heard from him quite as much. Maybe that's someone who can fill in. I look at those two guys, but Umeozulu specifically because he's someone in spring that we heard so many great things about. They raved about this kid in Spring Bowl, and he was one of your highest-rated signees as well, right? He was one of your highest-rated signees, and you felt really good about this kid, 4-star guy coming out of the DMV. And I think he can make an impact early. You need him to as well. Not just to build the defensive lines of tomorrow, but to provide some quality depth. Because this group is sorely missing that across the board. Desmond Umeozulu shining as a freshman is a necessity. And for South Carolina's defensive line unit in year one of Travian Robertson, finding success is a must if the Gamecocks will take a step forward defensively under third-year coordinator Clayton White. Guys, let's jump into our first break of the day. On the other side, we'll keep the conversation rolling as we wrap up talking Gamecocks defensive linemen here on this Friday. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. Daily Crow is also sponsored by Rhine Law Firm, LLC, principally managed by James R. Rhine Jr., located at 1350 Ashley River Road, Suite 650, Charleston, South Carolina, 29407, serving the greater Charleston area.
Marshall Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Friday, August the 11th, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Guys, we will get into the latest on fall camp, some significant news coming out of the last, 18 hours or so. So I promise we will dive into that here shortly. But for now, we're going to keep the conversation rolling as we talk South Carolina's defensive line. Of course, next week, guys, we will wrap up the position unit preview series, as Monday we talk linebackers, Wednesday we talk defensive backs, and Friday we'll cram in, talk kickers and punters on that Friday. Going to be a lot of fun. But guys, in the meantime, like I mentioned, the line of scrimmage, for whatever reason, continues to be a mystery for Gamecocks football, both offensively and defensively. And I sound like a broken record every single year this time, going into a Gamecocks football season. Will South Carolina be able to run the football? Will they be able to stop the run? Are they going to be able to generate enough of a pass rush to help their secondary? And I will say this, for the sake of the position unit preview series, we break these things up, right? For example, on the defensive side, defensive line, linebacker, and secondary. You know as well as I do that while the front four is massively important, it's not just on them to stop the run, right? Linebacker play has been a major issue at South Carolina as well, and they need to elevate their game, which we'll talk about Monday and Tuesday of next week. But the bottom line is this. This has been a position unit that every single year, every offseason, every summer, every fall camp, I have people running to me, Chris, the defensive line, man, it's going to be great. It's a top 5 unit in the SEC. Do you see that defensive line? Look at this signee. Look at this 5-star. Look at this guy, that guy. Every single year, the defensive line catches an insane amount of hype, and they never live up to it. You guys might recall last year, Zach Pickens in the middle, Jordan Burch off the edge. You know, all this hype and hoopla around the defensive front. Do you guys remember that South Carolina surrendered 200 or more rushing yards in the first 3 games of last season? 200 plus against Georgia State, Arkansas, and Georgia. Now, in that 3-game stretch, some of those sins are more forgivable than others. Obviously, the Georgia Bulldogs, they run the football well. Arkansas can run it well also. But it was really a tell of things to come for that season. And so when I look at this year, I think the expectations for this group are as realistic as they've been in quite some time. Because after 2 consecutive seasons of getting gashed, I don't know how you can come into year 3 with unrealistic expectations, especially when you factor in the roster turnover. Losing Zach Pickens in the middle is significant, guys. I don't know why more people aren't talking about this. And for all the commentary we had about Jordan Burch, and I understand, you know, he'll be labeled as a bust by some people, and he was overrated, he was terrible. This time last year, folks are pretty high on him. This time last year, folks had real high hopes and expectations. And to be fair to Jordan Burch, by the way, he came on strong late last season, played really well in that bowl game. I think that's honestly one of the reasons why his departure stung so badly. Because he was a guy you felt like was primed to return and have his best season ever in Garnet and Black. You also lose Gilbert Edmond, who transferred to Florida State, who, you know, was a reserve guy, but was forced into action, and I'd say played pretty well for South Carolina. Now, what did the Gamecocks go to the portal and get? They picked up Jatius Gear from Syracuse, who I think was a great pickup, guys. Great pickup. I think he slides in there nicely. And as I mentioned in the last segment, should be a maybe 7 or 8 sack guy for South Carolina. Jordan Strawn returns from injury, who is a guy you had on your team last year, but of course, only played about a game and a half. But outside of Jatius Gear, what did you do to bolster the defensive front? And so that's what I come back to. Do I love the addition of Travian Robertson at defensive line coach? I absolutely do. Do I think that Travian Robertson's experience under Brad Lawing, one of the greatest D-line coaches in the history, I'd say, of college football, his experiences at Georgia State and Tulane, which was a fantastic program. Heck, they're a preseason top 25 team this year. Do I think that Travian Robertson, no matter where he went, was one of the rising stars in the assistant coaching ranks? I absolutely do. I believe that Travian Robertson is going to have a massively positive impact when it's all said and done at South Carolina. I believe that to be true. But what I come back to is this. I look at this defensive front. I look at who they lost. Zach Pickens in the middle, Jordan Birch and Gilbert Edmond off the edge. Who did they bring in to replace that production? Jatius Gear. Who else? Who else? Elijah Davis comes from JUCO. He might pan out, but we don't know. And so when we talk about guys like, why does it feel like some of the hype train has lost steam? Why am I maybe lower on a unit than I expected? Roster turnover really hit South Carolina this offseason. For all the great things the portal has done, it ravaged the Gamecocks in a few areas. This is one of them. We've heard about numbers being an issue, numbers on the edge being an issue. And so I look at those losses, I look at what you lost and what you brought in. And guys, I love Tonka Hemingway. I think he's an all-SEC caliber guy. I think Boogie Huntley's solid. I think guys like Nick Barrett, TJ Sanders, Terrell Dawkins, Tyreek Johnson have potential. Brian Thomas Jr., who shined the spring game, they have potential. But we're banking on guys who all they've done in their career is been part of porous defensive lines. Nobody on this roster in this room has ever stopped the run worth a damn. And that's just a fact. Nobody in this room has ever helped the defensive line finish 10th or better in the SEC. That is a fact. And so could guys like Nick Barrett and TJ Sanders and some of these dudes, could they emerge and play their best football ever and lead South Carolina to that type of finish? Sure. But it's not a fantastic position to be in when you're banking on guys doing something they've never done before. That's not exactly a favorable position to be in. I will say this, the starting four, I feel pretty good about. I think you could do a lot worse than Strawn and Gear off the edges and Tonka and Boogie in the middle. Depth is where I'm concerned. Depth is a major concern in this group. And if an injury happens like last year where Strawn went down, God forbid somebody else goes down, South Carolina does not have the quality depth, guys, to withstand that. They don't have the bodies to withstand an injury or two. And so when I look at this group, like many others, I say, I think there's potential. I think there's talent in there. I think this group, can they be any worse than they were last year? 198 yards per game, guys. Excuse me. 198 yards per game. I don't know that this group can put up worse numbers. But when you look at what they lost, what little they brought in, I have a hard time looking at this on paper and pointing out reasons why this unit's going to take some massive step forward. I really do. I feel very similarly about the defensive line as I do the offensive line. Granted, I'll say this. If I'm picking one of the two, which one do I feel more confident can take a step forward or will? It is the defensive front because I think there's real athleticism here. I think in a world in which most offenses love to pass anyways, I think South Carolina does have capable bodies off the edge as long as everybody stays healthy. I think South Carolina's got a couple of guys in Jatius gear and Jordan Strawn, Desmond Umeozulu emerges. Maybe a Terrell Dawkins or Tyreek Johnson, Brian Thomas Jr., some of those guys emerge and play their best ball. I think you've got enough athletes on the edge to be pretty good, pretty decent getting after the quarterback. But there are not many things. There's nothing that points to South Carolina being better against the run in any significant way. They probably won't give up 198 yards per game again. It'll probably be somewhere around 180, 185, maybe 175. But it's not going to be some significant jump, more than likely. And if it does happen, it'll be because guys who have never done it before, have never really played that level of football, it'll be because they did something they've never done before, which is play at a high level. All that being said, I like your starting four. Depth is a major concern. Did you really address your needs this offseason? Did you fill the voids left by the departures of Zach Pickens, Jordan Burch, and Gilbert Edmond? We'll see, but I don't know that on paper you did. That reason, I give South Carolina's defensive line position unit a C- grade entering the 2023 football season, which I think is fair. I mean, listen, the defensive line, if you stack the O-line, D-line, lines of scrimmage, I'd put the defensive line slightly ahead, but both of these units, guys, are regarded as some of the worst in the SEC. That's just the reality. These units are not held in high regard. I think South Carolina, similar to the offensive line, Shane Beamer and company are recruiting line of scrimmage. They are recruiting the heck out of the line of scrimmage. They know they need more high-end talent there. But the problem is those guys aren't on campus yet. Those guys aren't at South Carolina yet. Dylan Stewart, he ain't here yet, guys. Some of these big-body defensive tackles that you see Georgia has and Bama has and LSU has and some of these other – Carolina ain't got those guys. Not yet, they don't. Not yet, they don't. And so we'll get to linebacker on Monday and Tuesday and their role in stopping the run, because I don't think all hope is lost, but it's a numbers game for this defensive front. And if South Carolina does play above their talent level, if South Carolina does take a major step forward, I think you look at a guy like a Travian Robertson and we'll be saying a job well done. Because there are issues in this front four. There are issues in this defensive front. And while there's athleticism, there's potential. The reality is this: the only way to solve these issues in the long term is recruiting. Guys, let's jump into another break on the other side. We'll talk a little fall camp as well as get our friend Jake Crane in here at 1 o'clock. Going to have a fun conversation with our friend Jake. Guys, all that and more on the other side. You're tuned in to The Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8800. 8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. Daily Crow is also sponsored by Rhine Law Firm, LLC, principally managed by James R. Rhine Jr., located at 1350 Ashley River Road, Suite 650, Charleston, South Carolina, 29407, serving the greater Charleston area.
Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Friday, August the 11th, 2023. TGIF. Hope you're all having a fantastic start to your weekend. Of course, NFL preseason is in full swing, so there is football on TV if you are starved for the game, which I guess we all are at this point, right? There is football on TV that you can take in. I'm not sure who. I think the Patriots played last night. Got the Packers tonight, I know, because my guy's a big Packers fan. Panthers go tomorrow at home. So that NFL preseason going. South Carolina, by the way, is going to scrimmage for the first time tomorrow in fall camp. And that's where I want to go with this. Of course, we've got Jake Crane upcoming at 1 o'clock. We'll have him on, say, for 20 or 30 minutes, and then we'll get into your questions, your comments, and calls. But the latest from fall camp, in case you missed, I would highly suggest go back to yesterday and listen to that conversation we had with J.C. Sherbert of the Big Spur. A lot of big updates, but there's a reason they say no news is good news when it comes to fall camp. We're already seeing from some different camps out there. Florida, for example, lost Justice Boone, who had 24 tackles, a sack, 14 pressures a season ago, was a projected starter for Florida. And oh, by the way, I think he went to Sumter High School, a native of South Carolina, torn ACL, out for the year for the Gators. I don't care what team it is. You hate to see that. News came out yesterday afternoon that the injury bug has hit South Carolina. And from those I've talked to, I don't think it's much of a secret anymore. Trey Knox, Gamecocks tight end, the Arkansas transfer, a guy that you'd expect to be tight end number one, suffered a sprained MCL, is the early diagnosis in yesterday's practice in full pads. Now, what is the severity? Because we saw a good portion of Gamecock Nation panic and lose their collective you-know-what at the news. From those that I've talked to, what it sounds like is worst-case scenario, Trey Knox will be out until the Georgia game. However, there is a high possibility he could play against North Carolina. It's a sprain, guys. It really just depends on how quickly it recovers. And it's one of those things, you don't want to rush a guy back early. If you've ever had a sprained ankle or sprained anything, it's one of those things you have to make sure it's fully healed. Because if you go back too early, you'll re-hurt the thing just like that. So, that is the latest with Trey Knox. Of course, Shane Beamer will speak to the media tomorrow following the scrimmage. The scrimmage is set to take place at 3:15 in the afternoon. And again, like I mentioned, he will speak, and I'm sure that there will be an update on Trey Knox because there are no secrets in Gamecock Nation. I don't think Shane Beamer can roll out there and say, no, nothing's happened. It's pretty much known at this point. Other than that, most notably coming out of fall camp, as JC mentioned and confirmed, the Luke Doty stuff. Luke Doty at wide receiver has real legs. Will he actually see any reps? We shall see. I think it's a much deeper wide receiver room than what Luke Doty experienced back in 2020 when he was fighting for catches. So if Luke Doty's emerging as the number 4 or number 3 wide receiver, it's because Luke Doty's a pretty damn good wide receiver, not because South Carolina has the lack of bodies. As you would expect, we've heard good things about Spencer Rattler. He looks comfortable. DeCarrion Joyner looks like a natural fit at the running back position. We've heard that the offensive line is nasty. They're nastier than years past. We'll see. We'll see what it means. It's sounding like Xavier Legette is continuing to make a splash in fall camp, and they're expecting him to have his best season ever in Garnet and Black. I think most fans are expecting that as well. And then there's Nicholas Harbor. I talked about this yesterday. The interesting updates on Nick Harbor. And this comes from multiple people that I've talked to that are saying that there's an adjustment period for Nicholas Harbor and that he's somewhat struggling to adjust because of the nuances of the wide receiver position, because of the physicality of SEC football. I had someone text me, I'm not going to say who, but go as far as to say, quote, I don't think he'll play a ton of snaps, end quote. I think South Carolina is going to find creative ways to get him the football early. But guys, there's more to playing wide receiver and there's more to playing college football than being really big and really fast. There's so much technique in the game of football. I do think you'll see him featured early. I just don't know that it's going to be as a true wide receiver running routes. On the defensive side, hearing good things about Jordan Strawn up front, Sterling Lucas saying that he's in his best shape he's ever been in, even in better shape than before the injury. Have also heard great things about Grayson Pup Howard, the true freshman. JC talking yesterday, he is ready to emerge and to be an impact guy for South Carolina. And then in the secondary, rave reviews surrounding DQ Smith. I thought it was interesting yesterday we saw DQ Smith mentioning, hey, I might play safety. I might play nickel. I'll kind of move all over the place. So Clayton White, Torian Gray getting a little bit creative when it comes to the secondary. That's about the extent of what we've heard to this point. And as I've told you guys before, man, I take it all with a grain of salt. I take it all with a grain of salt. It's one of those things where everyone's 12-0. Everyone's optimistic. Nobody's dropped a pass. Nobody's fumbled the football. Nobody's thrown an interception. But I'm sure there will be more nuggets that begin to come out after tomorrow's scrimmage. There's always things that you can kind of read between the lines, if you will. You know, we've heard a lot about Jelon Kilgore as well. He's a guy that's flashing. Judge Collier on the defensive side. Both those guys, you love to hear that. Those youngsters showing out in fall camp. I think that's one of those things you can really start to figure out which of the young guys are most likely going to be contributors. I would say those two defensive backs, along with Pup Howard, are a given. But we'll see. We'll see what comes out of the scrimmage tomorrow. We'll see what Coach Beamer has to say. But the last thing you want to hear is injuries. The last thing you want to hear news on is injuries. But the reality is this. It's football. They happen. And thankfully, the news with Trey Knox is it's not anything that's going to keep him out for an extended period of time. Let's see. We got a question from Bake SC. Gamecock Central or the Big Spur? Which website do people prefer? Yeah, I don't know. You'll have to get the feedback from the commenters. I mean, I would say both do a great job. I mean, they're both very similar. I think, I'll say this. I think that's why who those entities hire is so important, because think about it. It's not really a question of, do you like the Big Spur or Gamecock Central more? It's a question of, well, do you like Mike Yuva or Hale McGranahan more? Do you like Chris Clark or J.C. Sherbert more? Do you like Colin Taylor or John Whittle more? That's what it comes down to, right? That's what it comes down to. So, I think it's whichever, their personalities are different. That's what makes those two entities unique, is the differing personalities and the differing people that operate those. So I think it's just whatever your preference is. I don't think there's a wrong answer either, Bake SC. I think you can choose one and have a preference without, it reflecting negatively on the other, right? And I'm sure you would agree. Bruin Nation, do you like biscuit? I was lost there. I was like, what are you? And then I realized what was going on. Guys, we will get into your questions, your comments, your calls. 843-790-3377. Tons to discuss. Tons to get into here on this Friday, August the 11th. We await the arrival of my good friend Jake Crane. Tons to get into with Jake. We'll probably talk a lot of national college football as well, because I know that he's gearing up for the season. 0 is just around the corner. Guys, talking again with the MyBookie folks this morning. We will begin running our ads with MyBookie the week of week 0. Looking forward to it, guys. Again, we've got interviews that will be dropping all week long that week. If you guys want to know what those conversations are, I'll go ahead and spill the beans. So I think what we're going to do, I'll confirm what we're going to do. We're going to drop a single individual interview every single day on the podcast. A couple of the names that you'll be hearing from that week: Ty Richardson of ESPN Arkansas, SEC Mike of That SEC Podcast, my guy Dave Shoemate of Mock 10 Sports, Connor O'Gara, we already heard from Connor O'Gara, my bad. Brett Ciancia of Pick 6 Previews. And the other will be probably Chris Doring of SEC Network. So going to be a good time. We got a lot of fantastic interviews for you guys. looking forward to it. And again, appreciate you guys rolling with the punches. It'll be a fantastic week, that week of week 0 that we are out of town, but the pod will be rolling at a high level, of course. Guys, that being said, hey, we've hit 1 o'clock. Let's get him on here. Our friend Jake Crane of Crane & Company. He joins the show as we sit just over 3 weeks away from the start of South Carolina's football season, but just over 2 weeks away from toe meeting leather on the college football season. Jake Crane of Crane & Company. He joins the show. Jake, what's going on, my friend? Appreciate you jumping on. What's up?
Man, one day I'm ready to roll, dog.
I hear you, man. I hear you. Let's start again. Really?
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. Okay. We got the Wi-Fi connectivity issues with Jake Crane. Let's see. I'm gonna kick him and get him back in here. We're gonna kick Jake, get him back in here. See if he can refresh his Wi-Fi. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, it looks like we should be better now. We're going to try this again. Jake Crane going once, going twice. There you are. What's up, man? How you doing?
Man, I'm doing good. The Russians can't stop me that easy.
The Muschamp hackers, the Russians. I mean, what
Same
difference
group.
is there really? Yeah, same
group.
people. Same people with the same initiative, I would argue. Either way, Jake, again, appreciate you taking the time, my friend. We sit just 15 days away from the actual start of college football, of course, with week 0. I mean, who isn't pumped to watch Vandy and Hawaii and Nashville in a 25,000 seat stadium? I know that I am. And then, of course, 22 days away from actual week 1 college football. We got games that Thursday. NFL preseason underway. We made it, my man. Let's start with, a national storyline. I know you sent me this morning, Jake, and this kind of leads me to, the USA Today coaches poll came out earlier this week. Most overrated college football teams. I would imagine Southern Cal is up there for you after what I heard you talk about Lincoln Riley this morning.
Yeah, with that, but let me first off and say, man, what is week 0? Why do we do this? Why do we do this? It's week 1. Like, there's the patient 0. What is that, a ghost? Or like pre-boarding for an airplane? What? You're the first people to board. Why do we do this? But anyway, that's a personal thing. I need to work on it, I guess.
I had never heard of week 0 until I had only known week 0 as a high school football thing. And then college
what is week 0? Like before the Big Bang? That's like the only time that ever happened. Yeah. Like I'm trying to figure out what rich kid came up with that and then somebody had to run with it. That's what happened there for sure. I guarantee that's what happened. Like my thing with overrated is that I think we have to be able to separate, like, are we talking about overrated as a national championship contender? Because I'm so sick. Like, I see, and look, I know guys do things for clicks, right? We all want views. We talked about this. Clicks matter, right? Like bread matters to a baker. But that still doesn't mean that you build something up that it's not. Like, I'm watching people put USC in the top 5 just because they're really good on offense. That's it. They can be better on defense this year and still be a horrible defense. But to me, it's not even a USC problem. If we're talking about an actual national championship contenders, it's a Lincoln Riley problem. I know he's at year 2 in USC. I've watched USC be physical, right? I'm talking about Southern Cal. Okay, USC fans, so everybody just calm down. All right, I know that gets, some things get lost in translation.
Hey, that gets the clicks that you're speaking of.
Yeah, I don't want to fight that battle today. It's noon. I'm not ready to fight it. My body's ready, but I'm not ready. So when I look at USC and Lincoln Riley, he showed you who he was at Oklahoma. Lincoln Riley is one of the best offensive coordinators in the country that happens to be a head coach. That's the truth. It just that's what he is. He's an unbelievable game planner, unbelievable play caller. But when it comes to being balanced as a team, as a head coach, Lincoln Riley has 0-3 in the college football playoff. He's 1-4 in bowl games. His teams average giving up 52 points a game in these games. And that's not even talking about the regular season losses. Whenever they play an offense or a team that is physical up front, like, I don't know, Utah are somebody that can run with them offensively and is better than them defensively, they can't beat them. So, like, at what point do we say USC is the top 15 team? They're a top 5 offense, maybe even a top 3 offense. Caleb Williams is unbelievable. But at the end of the day, USC is not a national championship contender. Southern Cal is not a threat, in my opinion, to win a national championship because they don't have team balance. And when you don't have team balance, you fall your ass off the beam. That's what it's about.
Jake, let's stick in the top 10 of the USA Today coaches poll that, again, came out earlier this week. Florida State's really intriguing to me. They sit at number 8, Clemson at number 9. What do you make of the Seminoles? Because, I've heard conflicting arguments. There's some people out there that feel like FSU is ready to, under Mike Norvell, kind of return to the FSU of old, and they could be a college football playoff team. Then you have people like our friend Mark Ryan, who, he's a Gator, sure, but he's not the only one I've heard say this. They feel like Florida State's maybe the most overrated team in college football going into the season. What do you make of FSU? Do you think the ACC is theirs to lose this year, or do you think Clemson has a resurgence? And, it's funny, I say resurgence. They won the freaking ACC last year. So do you think that Clemson takes back the top spot, or is Florida State going to dethrone them?
Well, I think, number one, you have to obviously look at the conference that they're in. Not to say that there aren't some teams that can be landmines. I kind of almost put their schedule, not from a strength standpoint, but kind of a scenario standpoint, kind of close to LSU, right? Their biggest game against probably the toughest team in their division, or in the ACC, outside of the division, is on the road. Florida State's is at Clemson, right? I'm talking about in conference, and LSU's is at Alabama. When I look at this Florida State team, they have the unteachable intangible, which is experience. They had a really good team last year. Jared Verse comes back. Where did they get worse? I said the same thing about LSU, right? You can even say the same thing about Texas. Where did they get worse at? So Jordan Travis, who I think is an NFL wide receiver, is a really good college quarterback. Coming back, I think he's a big problem in the system that they run. I like what they have at running back. They're veterans somewhat up front on the offensive line. They've grown there. They've got Johnny Wilson, who's a giraffe on roller skates outside. They added Keon Coleman, who's going to be an absolute problem. But Jaheim Bell, y'all know better than anybody, who they added in the transfer portal, the ultimate Swiss Army knife, the red zone monster. He's going to be a huge part of that offense and kind of being a security blanket, I think, for Jordan Travis as well. And defensively, I just talked about the lack of team balance for USC. I think FSU, from an offensive, defensive, and special team standpoint, is a very balanced team. You mix that with a schedule that's not exactly, getting hit with a baseball bat every time you walk through the door. Yeah, they've got a chance. And, if you lose that game to LSU, you can still go undefeated the rest of the way, win the ACC, and get into the college football playoff, because I think that's going to be a quality loss in week one against a team in LSU that I'm expecting a lot from. So, yeah, I don't think Florida State's overrated. I think they should be above USC. Explain to me how USC is a better team than Florida State. I'll wait and listen, because you can't, because that's a lie. It's a trick. It's like the guy off Unusual Suspects or whatever, Usual Suspects, Kevin Spacey, who's like walking at the end like pigeon-toed, then all of a sudden he figures it out. Like it's a trick. They're Kaiser Sose.
Jake, I know that these preseason polls don't matter all that much. We'll get the AP Top 25 on Monday. But you know what, Jake? This is a lot more fun than talking conference realignments. I'm going to keep it going. Did you have any issues with the top 5, Georgia, Michigan, Alabama, Ohio State, LSU? I know Southern Cal at 6. We know how you feel about that. Top 5, would you put it any differently than what they released?
No, I mean, they're playing the greatest hits. There it is. Here's my Ohio State's interesting to me. And I know you got to give them the benefit of the doubt, right? I mean, it's easy to look at Georgia, right? And Carson Beck stepping into Ferrari, he just got to drive the speed limit, which is sometimes hard in a Ferrari. Even though I've never been in one, I can imagine.
That is a great Georgia joke, by the way. I don't know if you meant to do that, but that's a very nice with the things that have occurred.
Wow, yeah, no, I actually did not mean to do that, but if y'all like it, I'll definitely.
It is hard to drive the speed limit. They would attest.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
right.
There we go. Good, clip that one out of context. That'll be great. Well, Michigan, I mean, they got 7 offensive linemen that I think can get drafted. I mean, you return your quarterback, you return 2 quality running backs. I think they're going to be good enough on the outside, and then defensively, Michigan's going to be a problem. I think they win the Big Ten. Ohio State, though, is very interesting to me. I think Colin McCord's going to win it. They're elite at wide receiver. I mean, you look at Ibuka, you look at Marvin Harrison Jr., I can go down the list. But if they don't get back that physical edge that they had that kind of let them push Michigan around for a while, I could see Ohio State, man. They go to Wisconsin. And I think Wisconsin is a team this year that a lot of people are kind of sleeping on. They're in the Big Ten West. Last year, divisions in the Big Ten. Luke Fickell and Phil Longo, I like that combination at head coach and OC. You're going to get some air raid principles, but it's not going to be a Mike Leach style, let's throw the ball 60 times and just run high-low op and shallow cross and mesh and all this stuff and see what happens. But then you look at kind of the schedule that Wisconsin has, outside of Ohio State, they could be favored to win every game they play in. And I don't know why more people aren't talking about Tanner Mordecai. We hear all about these transfer portal quarterbacks, and yet nobody is talking about Tanner Mordecai. He's one of my hinge players for the season. A hinge player to me is a guy that if he plays well, and most of them are at the quarterback position, pretty much all of them, the team around him is good enough to really do some damage. I think Joe Milton's in that same category. I just mentioned Tanner Mordecai. You look at Drew Aller from Penn State, if he's able to do what a lot of people think. So, man, Ohio State is an interesting case to me. But Bama, when is the last time Bama's had to replace a quarterback and a left tackle in the same year? They're trying to go back, speaking about playing the greatest hits, trying to go back to the Bama that got him here. We're going to play bully ball and just, have a bunch of FU runs on 3rd and 2, middle finger runs. Some people call them something different. But is this a transition year for Alabama trying to get back to who they were from an identity standpoint? So I would say on the top 5, Ohio State may be the shakiest to me on that list with Alabama second.
Jake, let's have some fun with this. We know about the top 4, obviously, like you said, play the greatest hits. I feel like 6 through 8 is they're obvious contenders. 10 through 15, Tennessee, Washington, Texas, Notre Dame, Utah, Oregon. Of those teams that it's mentioned, who do you feel like if one were to make an unprecedented run, disrupt the playoff, maybe make the playoff, who's the team you're buying stock in out of that group?
Look, I'm not a trends guy. I've been in it. And if you've ever been in it, you know that every year is a different year. It's a different circumstance. You have a different schedule. You have different leadership. Coaches come and go at position groups and things like that. So I'm not you haven't done it since then, so you're not going to do it now. That's a casual trap to me. Not that you don't look at patterns, and it's fun for fans to make fun of it, but that's just not the reality of the team. I think Texas. We have our predictions. We release a week before the season. So on August 19th, we're going to go day by day, conference by conference, and then the finale that Friday end with who we think is going to make the college football playoff and win the Natty. Man, I look at Texas again up front. I think they got a top 5 offensive line in the country. Quinn Ewers has shown you that when he's on, he can really be on. And people say, oh, well, he was up and down. Well, yeah, that's what a young quarterback does. That's thrust into that role. That's why they're young quarterbacks. Most young guys don't come out and just play well the whole year. That's the anomaly. Defensively, I think they're as physical as they have been, kind of the opposite of what I think is going on at USC. And then you return 5 of your top 6 wide receivers. You return A.D. Mitchell, a guy I know a lot of South Carolina fans know about. I think there's a good chance Texas may end up making the playoff.
Jake, most interesting fall camp storyline you've heard at this point? I know, again, you take it with a grain of salt. The pads are just now starting to come on, so jobs will begin to be won. But, LSU gets in a big brawl at practice. We're hearing about maybe there's a 2-quarterback system coming in Alabama. That quarterback battle rages on. What's jumped out to you early in fall camp as these teams get ready for the 2023 season?
Well, I think the obvious answer is what's going on in Alabama at the quarterback position. We talk about going to the kind of old school pro style traditional system. Does Jalen Milroe fit that? Is that what he needs to be? It seems like it's more Ty Simpson and then Tyler Buckner, who obviously is familiar with what Tommy Rees does, even though it is going to be Nick Saban's offense. Don't make any mistake or don't get that twisted. Rees has even had to change his terminology. But when you have a high profile place like Alabama that hasn't lost more than 2 games in the regular season in the past 15 years, then yeah, the quarterback battle, trying to follow up Bryce Young and Mac Jones and Tua and Jalen Hurts and all these guys, it's going to be interesting. But, a storyline I think is also pretty interesting. I think Robbie Ashford may have a chance to win this job at Auburn. And if he does, that's either going to be really, really good or it's going to be really, really bad. I don't think there's any in between there. And then, the fight stuff at LSU, look, if you don't have at least 3 fights during fall camp, especially when the pads start coming on, I don't believe in you. That's not saying you want to go out there and everybody just fight everybody. It's in the UFC. It's in Mortal Kombat. But fights happen. It's part of it. Typically, it's younger guys that get in fights because they're out there trying to prove themselves. The older guys don't want to get worn out. Like, they know, like, sometimes you just let them fight and they learn, well, we just fought for 45 seconds in pads and it's hot, and now we just ruin the rest of our practice. So I don't put too much stock in that. Just don't take your helmet off and start swinging it. Don't punch a guy with the helmet on. Other than that, a lot of it is baseball fighting. Grab the jerseys. Your mother's this, whatever. But no, it's the Alabama quarterback battle. Who's ever going to come out of that and try and lead this new old school offense? That's the biggest storyline, I think.
Jake, I was posed this question by our friend Austin Gregory. Excuse me, Austin Gregory in our Discord. I want to pose it to you because I think it's really interesting.
God, I love when you pose for me, Chris.
Do what now?
I love when you pose for me.
Of course. Weekly thing for us. No, Austin asked this: is Spencer Rattler getting too much or not enough attention? He said that he didn't know how to answer that, and I would say just the right amount. What say you about the attention that Spencer Rattler's getting? Because I'll tell you this, Jake, and I've gone on record and say this. Admittedly, I was higher on Rattler this time last year than I am right now because I don't know that I knew how he was capable of playing as poorly as he did. Was that all his fault? Was it Satterfield? Sure. But, I don't know. Maybe I had unrealistic expectations. Maybe I was expecting more than he actually is. But, I think there's some people out there that are really vouching for this guy as one of the best quarterbacks in college football. But the hype feels very, very subdued even compared to this time last year. I mean, what say you about he? And I think the hype around South Carolina as well, because I think it feels subdued with the Gamecocks as a whole.
Yeah, look, whenever you're the quarterback at a place like South Carolina and you ended the year the way that Spencer Rattler ended the year and you started the year the way that Spencer Rattler started the year, I think a lot of it is the unknown is intriguing, right? I feel like you're either in one of two camps on Spencer Rattler. Either you love the guy or you can't stand the guy. I don't think, just as I mentioned, there's not a lot of in-between with Robbie Ashford and Auburn. I don't think there's a lot of in-between in the Spencer Rattler camp. But my thing is this. I think he's getting too much attention because that's not my biggest worry for South Carolina. And again, I'm going to tell you what I think. Want to make people happy, I sell ice cream and brownies for a living, but I don't. I talk about sports. This season is not going to be dictated just on how Spencer Rattler plays. I think Spencer Rattler has a chance to have a really good year. This season for South Carolina is going to be dictated on how good they are up front on both sides of the ball. And I feel like I come on here and say this every week, but it's the truth. South Carolina, man, stop worrying about Spencer Rattler. I would literally stop worrying about Spencer Rattler. I would hope that you can, because guess what? Spencer Rattler can be the best player in the country. But if you can't protect him, if you can't run the ball, it doesn't matter. This isn't basketball. This isn't baseball. One guy can't go out there and win the game for you when everybody else plays bad. If South Carolina can't run it, and they can't stop the run, and they're one-dimensional on offense, and they're not dimensional on defense, it doesn't make a damn whether Spencer Rattler can turn wine into water or walk upside down from the bottom of the state to the top of the state. So if the pieces around Spencer Rattler and in front of him and that front seven on defense don't play well, it doesn't matter. Spencer Rattler is literally one of my least worries when it comes to South Carolina. And that's just the truth, because this game is won and lost up front. There's been a lot of teams that have won a lot of games that were really good up front and average at quarterback. There's been a lot of teams that lost a lot of games because they were elite at quarterback and bad up front. So South Carolina doesn't have to be the greatest team in the world up front. They don't have to be, Michigan's offensive line. They don't have to be the steel curtain on defense. You just have to be good enough to give your best players a chance to go make plays. That's the biggest question for South Carolina. And Spencer's going to get all the attention. That's part of playing the position. You get too much credit when it goes good and too much blame when it goes bad. But I can guarantee you this season will be determined by how those guys do up front.
Jake, I read a stat yesterday or 2 days ago, this week sometime, 62% of the starting quarterbacks, I believe, at Power 5 are transfer portal guys.
Yeah.
How do you feel like that affects the recruiting at that position? Because, South Carolina is a great example that they got a bunch of guys that have been kind of just rotting away on the bench for a couple of years. And, you need depth for sure. You can never have too many good quarterbacks. But Do you worry about what it means for recruiting at high school for that position specifically? Because I kind of look at it this way. I mean, it's a year-to-year thing, and I'm like, as a head coach, who would you rather turn the keys over to? A true freshman who's completely unproven, or a guy who maybe he hasn't been great, but he's at least done it in college? Like, he's done it at the Power 5 level. But, I mean, what do you think that means for recruiting of that position when it comes to the way the portal is being utilized?
Well, I don't think it means too much because they know if something happens like that, they can just get in the transfer portal. There's a reason that 62% of them are from the portal. I think it takes a little bit of the worry about it. Now, it's something if you're a guy that's and everybody wants to go in and play as a true freshman, but not a lot of true freshman quarterbacks go in there and get to play. A lot of these transfer quarterbacks you see are either 1 or 2 year guys, kind of mercenaries for hire. Maybe if you missed on a guy and at a high school that you have developed, it gives you a chance to kind of save yourself, especially if you have weapons around them and you're good up front. But I think a lot of the worry is taken out of it because those quarterbacks know, hey, if I go in there and this happens or it's not what I thought it was, then I can hop in the transfer portal. Now, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I think people fall on different sides of the fence. I think there's circumstances where guys need to stick it out and circumstances where guys need to leave. But no, I don't think it's as big as a worry as some people think.
Jake Crane of Crane and Company. He joins the show every single week. Jake, remind us one more time, number one, where to find the show. But number two, I know our audience is very intrigued by you guys' predictions, what you guys are going to be locking in. When is that coming? Remind us just one more time.
Yeah, man. We start on August 19th, the week of week 0, which is week 1. Again, God help me. So August 19th, I believe. I can go back and look at it. Whatever that Monday is, going into that first Saturday, we're going to start obviously with the SEC and work our way all the way throughout the week up into the college football playoff and who we think is going to win the Natty. But we are literally like under 5,000 subscribers away from 100,000. I really want to throw that party before college football kicks off. So if you get a chance, go to YouTube. It's Crane and Company, CRAIN and Company. Go subscribe. We're live 7:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern each weekday. We have live calls, live chat. We talk obviously a ton of college football, and it's a lot of fun. So if you like this interaction, I think there's a lot of crossover with kind of the way we go about our stuff with the way that Chris does. And you obviously know you like this show. You're here. I like it a lot too. So no, come check us out, man. And yeah, we're going to be dropping those predictions soon.
Beautiful. Jake, you're the man. Look forward to that and look forward to chatting with you again next week, my friend.
You too, brother. Appreciate y'all.
Yeah, man. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Jake Crane of Crane and Company. Always a pleasure to hear from him, and really intriguing stuff. Like he mentions, line of scrimmage. We get tired of hearing about it, but it's just the reality. John Edward points something out that I'm glad he does so. Cam Scott will make his announcement at 2:00 today. Big-time basketball recruit. Will South Carolina land him? We shall see. Guys, hey, we're going to jump into a quick break. We're diving into the Q&A Power Hour. You guys asked, we delivered an extended Q&A Power Hour here on this Friday. Your questions, your comments, your calls, and more on the other side of the break. You're tuned in to The Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. Daily Crow is also sponsored by Rhine Law Firm, LLC, principally managed by James R. Rhine Jr., located at 1350 Ashley River Road, Suite 650, Charleston, South Carolina, 29407, serving the greater Charleston area.
Marshall Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Friday, August the 11th, 2023. The Q&A Power Hour is officially live as we take your questions, your comments, your calls as well. 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Very excited to hear from you. Again, as our friend John Edward mentioned, Cam Scott will be committing at 2 o'clock. Will be a big-time pickup for South Carolina. So we shall see what happens. In the meantime, I want to hear from you. The phone lines are open, 843-790-3377. Let me say this. I cannot wait for the post-game call-in shows to begin to take place after each and every single South Carolina football game this season. We'll jump on literally right here. As you see me right now, we'll jump on. The phone lines will be open. And I really, the hope and the expectation, and I know this is not going to be a problem. in regards to like generating buzz or getting calls, because everybody wants a spot to either celebrate or voice their frustrations. And so literally the plan is going to be, it's going to be the Spurs Up Show, post-game call-in show. We're going to have a special YouTube template graphic made for it so you guys know it'll be scheduled to play, what have you. Following kickoff, I'd say within 10 minutes of kickoff, of the game concluding, within 10 minutes or so, we'll jump on right here. We'll probably get our ad read out of the way, and we'll say, hey, phone lines are open. Y'all go ahead. And the show will literally be in place for you all to vent, to celebrate, to give your thoughts, your opinions, whatever it might be. Going to be a lot of fun. Cannot wait for the post-game call-in show. It's going to be off the rails more than likely. I can tell you that much. Let's get back and get through your questions. Robbie Davis early on. What's up, Chris? Go Gamecocks. Beamer ball to the moon. Sean, as we mentioned, Trey Knox, possible minor sprain. Yep. That was something that, we talked about earlier, obviously. Should not be any sort of seasoning, nothing crazy. So he should be good to go early in the season. Lynn Turner, love your shirt. I'm part of the reason why you have the quote and why students had to be moved from the upper deck. We made it sway on purpose. Well, Lynn, I appreciate that. I love this shirt and I love this line. And that's awesome that you did that. Truly. Justin says, big year for Beamer as a head coach, judge of hiring coach with how Loggins does with White in the defense, and at least second string isn't consistent and improved might be time to look for a replacement. I will say, I think you learned a lot about coaches when they have to go hire coordinators. And so hitting a home run on Dalvin Loggins, it is a must. It is absolutely a must. Jay Shock, enjoy hearing you talking ball, Chris. I look forward to watching your show. Thank you, Jay Shock. Thank you. Appreciate that. Great to hear from you, Jay Shock. Lynn says, having stronger linebackers also helps plug holes, which helps with the pass rush. Linebacker has been a weak link for a while. I agree, Lynn. Listen, I agree. I think it's been a weak link for sure. And we'll talk about them more on Monday and Tuesday. It takes all 11, as Shane Buren pointed out at SEC Media Days. It takes all 11 to stop the run. Cody says, the time has come. We should start expecting more sacks, less interceptions, less turnovers, etc. We've been so used to having low expectations in all these categories over the years. Well, and I tell you this, Cody, and I know this is going to sound crazy. I hope the pass defense is worse this year. I do. And I don't mean that in the sense of I hope they don't play well. But I just, as Brad Lowing said, never brag about your pass defense because it just means you can't stop the run. Like, I'd rather us be 50th in pass defense, but the run defense actually be decent than, we're up here beating our chest over a top 10 pass defense, but literally can't stop a nosebleed. There needs to be some defensive balance more than anything. Being a one-trick pony and then beating your chest because, oh, look, I've got this one thing. It's like a pitcher bragging about being able to throw 100, but his ERA 7. Like, who cares? You have one pitch. Who cares? James Martin says, D-line always looks good in preseason because they're going against our offensive line. Oh, man. Oh, excuse me. Jacob B. says, 4-2-5 requires excellent linebacker play for run support. We just haven't had that since Ernest Jones. Should be much better this year. That's a very good point you make. Robert Hastings, I think Brian Thomas Jr. is going to look good this year. He looked good in the spring game for what it's worth. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, maybe that was just a flash in the spring game, or maybe he can be a real big-time contributor for South Carolina. Hunter Johnson, I'm ready to see Lenore Sellers take snaps. Indeed. Yeah, I think a lot of people are. Nathan, I think the Gamecocks finish second in the East this year if the O-line has a good year. I could see it. Nathan, I could see it. Ethan, don't want to lose Knox, but don't think we lose the first two by not having him. We'll need him for SEC play. Yeah, I mean, Ethan, obviously Furman, you should not need Trey Knox. I would like Trey Knox for week 1. Ethan says Simon will get lots of looks for UNC, I bet. I'll go back to I I would like Trey Knox for week 1. And this brings me to, I don't know that, like, I look at week 1 guys as a true coin flip. Like, I don't see it being a blowout. I don't see South Carolina as just worlds above UNC. I get the feeling some Gamecock fans feel that way. That, like, South Carolina is just going to go out and just dominate UNC. Run them up and down the field. It might happen. But I think it's far from a guarantee. I think it's much more of a coin flip game. And I mean, UNC is literally favored in the ball game. So do with that what you will. Nathan says, August can't go by fast enough. I hear you, man. Evan says, I think the defensive line will be a lot better this season. I know there was concern with depth, but we still have some veteran guys in there. Maybe problem was Lindsey. Maybe the problem was Jimmy Lindsey, my friend. Maybe it was. Maybe the problem really, truly was Jimmy Lindsey. I mean, we hope that's the problem. Let's see. Ethan says it's time to move Joyner to tight end. I mean, what can't he do, right? What can't he do? I see Jake riled up a good bit of you for calling Southern Cal USC. Jake likes to ruffle the feathers a little bit. Todd Smith, what's going on, man? Appreciate you. Appreciate you tuning in. Let's see. Spur Daddy says, who's Cam Smith? Cam Scott, John Edward. Oh, I forgot. You got me blocked and won't see this comment. John Edward. Man, you got a lot of the chat blocked, John Edward. Spur Daddy says, Chris, if Knox is unable to go against UNC, who do you see maybe moving over in a tight end position from another group? Spur Daddy, you literally reloaded the room with like 8 people. Why would you move someone over to play tight end who's not a tight end? Like, if Trey Knox can't go against UNC, Joshua Simon will be tight end 1. Whoever was number 3 slides to 2, 4 to 3, etc. I mean, you're not moving people over that don't even play the position. DJ Sun Tzu, what's up, man? Been a while. He says, been listening to Chris a lot in Greenville on 107, the Fan Upstate. How about that? How about that? John, not even going to entertain that comment from Spur Daddy, says John Edward. KFC in Africa. Stone's hurt, isn't he? I think he's got something he's nursing, but I don't think it's major. Bake SC says Pup and Stone will go down as the best linebacker duo in team history. Now, that's bold. I think that's bold. Let's see. Ruination says, I've heard that Cam Scott was Bama or Auburn bound most likely, but we're out of it. Really? That hurt. Ruination, you're telling me a guy from Lexington, South Carolina is going to Bama or Auburn? That's tough. That's a tough miss for Lamont. That is. The homie Lamont is not cooking. Jay Shock, I totally agree with you about the depth in the D-line, but with that being said, we all know there's talent as well. Who's not to say Travian was the missing piece of that room? Jay Shock, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. Maybe you are right. I mean, it could be. Could be. Justin says, what's the go-to game day barbecue spot in Charlotte for game week? I got to be honest, Justin, I have not been to Charlotte in so long, and I haven't lived there in even longer. So I have no idea, to be honest with you. I have no idea. Again, Cam Scott's commitment is upcoming at 2 o'clock. I tell you what, let's get into this, by the way, just for fun. On 3 posted at the end of September, South Carolina's record will be blank, and it's UNC, Furman, Georgia State, or Mississippi State, and Tennessee. I do not win a lot of people over by picking that Mississippi State game as a loss. I really don't. Had somebody say, you're so negative lately about any potential either side of the team has this year. I get it. We don't have the best record, but at least have a little more enthusiasm about the upcoming season. It's funny how people take my my analysis as being a pessimist or not excited for football. Bro, I'm ecstatic for football. I'm ecstatic for football. And I mean, I picked a 2-3 start in September. I've picked a 7-5 finish. Is picking 7-5 being pessimistic? I really don't think so. I mean, again, I know that Mississippi State pick is one that's going to throw people off. I get that. But I don't understand how that's like unfathomable for people. I really don't. I mean, Carolina lost to Mizzou last year, guys, at home. You think they can't lose to Mississippi State? Again, we've already done we've already done the whole prediction stuff like that, but like 7-5 to me feels right for South Carolina. It just does. Is 8-4 achievable? Absolutely. I think anywhere between 6-6 and 8-4 is very realistic. I think that's very realistic. I think 9-3, I think that's a little bit aggressive. I think 5-7, that's a little bit overly pessimistic. I'm right in the middle. I almost feel like I'm making the safe pick to a degree. But I mean, I don't think 7-5. I mean, and that's the thing, guys. I mean, there's evidence to support that 2-3 in September could very realistically happen. Carolina started slow under Shane Beamer. They have not played well early. They've caught fire late, which is why I've got South Carolina losing to State, but picking up wins over Missouri and Kentucky late in the season, which will be two very high-quality wins in my mind. I mean, beating a Mizzou team in Como that you haven't beaten since forever. 4 straight losses, haven't beaten them in Como in God knows how long. That'll be a solid win. And then Kentucky, who I'm high on, that I think they could be, I'd have to look at their schedule. I think they could be 7-3 or God forbid 8-2 at that point. I really do. So, but I am very, and I'll say this because people keep asking me, Chris, how are we going to go 7-5 with all these C- grades and D grades? Well, let me remind you, there's only 2 position units I grade as a D in any capacity. Running back's a D, O-line's a D+. I've got quarterbacks an A. I've got receivers a B+. I've got tight ends at a C+. D-line a C-. I'm not going to spoil the grades the rest of the way, but let's think about this, right? On an A to F scale, a real A to F, here's where most people struggle. They're way too favorable in the grading. So, like, everybody gets a B. Everything's a B. Everything's a B+. It's like, well, what's an F? Is anybody an F? If you're grading on a true A through F scale, A is the best of the best, 15-0 national champions. F, 0-12, you stunk. I think a C grade for a football team is about a 5-7, 6-6, 7-5-ish football team. Middle of the pack. 6-6. I'd say a C is a 6-6 football team. South Carolina as a whole. So if you do the averages, when it's all said and done, I guarantee you the averages of all the grades I've given, it's going to be around a C or a C-. But you have to factor in coaching. You have to factor in Beamer ball. What Shane Beamer has done, guys, over his first 2 years is this. South Carolina in year 1 was probably a 3 or 4 win football team in regards to the talent they had on the roster, the quarterback position, other things. Shane Beamer elevated them to 6 wins in the regular season and a bowl win. Last year, Carolina was probably a 6-6 football team. They absolutely were. Shane Beamer and company elevated them to 8 regular season wins. I look at the Gamecocks this year very similarly. They're probably still about a 6-6 football team, talent-wise. But with Shane Beamer and company, I expect better. 7-5. I think 8-4 is very possible. They could beat Mississippi State, guys. Carolina could absolutely. I may look like a damn fool come week 4. I may look like a complete idiot. South Carolina might beat Mississippi State by 3 touchdowns. Heck, I don't know. It might happen. But to insinuate that is, everybody's just so mind blown about that game. And it's like, I don't understand why it's so hard to conceive that Carolina could lose that game. Like, it's very losable. That game is very losable for South Carolina. It's also very winnable. So we'll see, man. I mean, again, it's fun making predictions, projections. I mean, I love doing that. It's one of my favorite parts of the preseason. But I'm also ready for real ball on the field. Billy Napier saying this: they've named a starting quarterback. He's not ready to announce it yet. Quote, we've seen enough in regards to naming their starting quarterback. So Florida knows. And I mean, it's got to be Graham Mertz. There's no question. It's Graham Mertz. It's Graham Mertz. I mean, I don't know who else it could be. Anyways, guys, 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377 here on this Friday. Again, Cam Scott, if I can say it, commitment is upcoming at 2 o'clock. We will find out who he will be playing for. So I know some of you out there, by the way, we'll carry this conversation because we are about to jump into a break. I'm curious, though. Admittedly, I'm not all that tied in when it comes to like high school football. I don't have a ton of, I'm not really in the loop, right? I stay so wrapped up with the Gamecocks and everything. Sorry, I got sidetracked. A list. Top 50 head coaches who would win in a fight. Shane Beamer is nowhere to be found. Interesting. Anyways, those who do keep up with high school football, and if I sound at risk of sounding out of the loop, I mean, whatever. It is what it is. I'm going to do so. Is NIL a big thing at the high school level yet? Like kids leaving a high school to go to another high school for NIL? Is that a thing? I know Bruin Nation has to know. I know Bruin Nation knows. Are guys doing that? Florida's new quarterback, he says, rack my. KFC, dude, where's JC been? He was literally on the show yesterday, KFC. He was on the show yesterday. Chase Floyd says, join the Big Cock Club today, the Patreon. Yes, we have a good time with it for sure. Guys, that being said, we're going to jump into another break. On the other side, we'll keep the conversation rolling, taking your questions, your comments, your calls, and more. You're tuned in to The Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. Daily Crow is also sponsored by Rhine Law Firm, LLC, principally managed by James R. Rhine Jr., located at 1350 Ashley River Road, Suite 650, Charleston, South Carolina, 29407, serving the greater Charleston area.
That's your Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Friday, August the 11th, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Let's see. We're getting back into your questions. Again, Cam Scott, his commitment is upcoming in just about 5 minutes or so. Rumination says charter schools do the NIL thing. But apparently transfer portal is big in high school. Okay. I was just curious. I mean, normally this stuff trickles down or what have you, but I just, wasn't exactly sure. Wasn't exactly sure. So, KFC, aren't we glad we didn't get Napier? He low key sucks. I mean, I don't think Billy Napier is like an awful coach. I mean, KFC, look at what Florida is doing in recruiting right now. They are ranked third. They are ranked third in recruiting. Jeremy Jackson will be last year's Tennessee, but I feel like we will finish the deal. Jeremy, God bless you, my friend. From your lips to God's ears. From your lips to God's ears, I will say. Jeff Gullidge, have we had back-to-back losses under Shane Beamer? Jeff, absolutely 110% we have. Last year, we lost to Arkansas and Georgia in back-to-back weeks. Yes, it absolutely has happened. Now, I think that was the only time. It hasn't happened a lot. It's crazy to think, too, when you think back, South Carolina won 4 games in a row at one point last year. That was what made that Missouri loss just so tough to stomach. I mean, you guys remember, right? South Carolina had won 4 in a row coming off that big Texas A&M win. I think we were ranked 25th or right on the edge of the top 25 and just laid an egg. Evan Lusk says, average of your grade so far is a C+ on a GPA scale. There you go. There you go. There's Evan Lusk. Ethan says Mac's Speed Shop is the best barbecue spot in Charlotte. Another great Italian restaurant is the Open Kitchen on West Moorhead. Got a lot of love for Charlotte, man. Got a lot of love for Charlotte. Lived there for 4 years. It's obviously changed a lot since I lived there. But Charlotte's a vibe, man. It's a dope place. Very, very dope place. Anyways, guys, phone lines are open. 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377 here on this Friday, August the 11th. Let's see. Mm-mm. 15 days until college football. How about that? 15 days. Our friend Brad Crawford just dropped an article. Toughest schedules in the country. South Carolina makes the list. He says this: Shane Beamer's quest to South Carolina will be challenging. The Gamecocks open against UNC, team that won the ACC Coastal last season, and returns the best player in the ACC in Drake May before going to Georgia in Week 3 for their SEC opener. Carolina travels to Tennessee and A&M and hosts Clemson as well. So that's likely 3 additional top 15 opponents, at least the Gamecocks in the season, with 4 home games in November. Death taxes and South Carolina having one of, if not the toughest schedule in college football. Should be getting non-conference schedules here soon for basketball. Auburn just dropped theirs non-conference schedule. And I have decided, yes, we will do a countdown to basketball season. Last year, I got about a week in, and folks just didn't really seem interested in it. You know what? I'm going to count down to basketball. Let's see. Back into your questions. Yes, week 0, Notre Dame plays Navy and Ireland. That'll be a fun one. KFC says, we have a basketball team. Bruin says the next 3 weeks are going to drag ass. Yeah, they typically do, Bruin. They typically do because we're so excited for what's to come. And that's why I said, I hate to leave you guys for a week. Of course, the podcast will still operate at a high level, but I'm actually really excited to detach for a week and spend a week in Montana and, kind of get away from it and sort of refresh before we really dive back in, because we'll be locked in from week 1 to week 13 and beyond for the college football season. So excited to get some time away and hit kind of the refresh button, you could say. Hit the refresh button, if you will, and, come back ready to go. So really looking forward to it. Let's see. Jay Shock says, last time I watched our Birds play in Charlotte was in a bowl game against Virginia. Why did I say Virginia? Virginia. Yeah, I was at that game, believe it or not. I was at that game. There have been few games that I have not really even for a moment cheered. That one is one. Because, and I mean I didn't cheer because, nothing good happened start to finish. Nothing. Right? Nothing good happened start to finish. That one for sure, I would say 2020 Texas A&M, 2019 Texas A&M. Last year's Florida game. 2021 Texas A&M. A lot of bad games against Texas A&M. I'd honestly say probably last year's Georgia game too. That game was, dude, last year's Georgia game was. And so, that's what kind of blows my mind is when people think Carolina's going to beat Georgia. And I'm like, did you forget what happened last year? Did you forget that South Carolina, it's not like the Gamecocks got beat last year. They got dominated. Start to finish. I just I got to see some more competitiveness in the game before I pick a W, before I pick any sort of upset. Let's see. Evan Lusk, 2019 UNC was when I knew Muschamp wasn't going to pan out. Same here. It's where the Fire Muschamp rant came from, my friend. It's where the Fire Muschamp rant came from. KFC says vacation next week, then get back and start hunting season. Love that for you. Love that for you. Guys, the season simulation series returns this weekend. Sunday night, we'll take on Vanderbilt. Monday night, Kentucky. And then Tuesday night, we've got the Clemson Tigers. That's going to be a lot of fun. Those three all at home, too. It's going to be a blast. Truly. Cannot wait for that. Look forward to closing out the season simulation series. Again, going to be a ton of fun. Going to be a ton of fun. Let's see. Jay Shock. What year did we upset number 4 Ole Miss? That was one of the best games I ever went to in Willie B. It was 2009. I was at that game. Yeah, that was awesome. I was at that game. We actually had practice that day, funny enough, and went to that game after practice, and what a good time that was. That was a blast. That was an absolute blast. Bruin Nation says, Chris, how about Greg the Muschamp guy? Dude, I knew this years ago, bro. Like, I knew this last year, 2 years ago. That dude loves Will Muschamp. Loves him. Let's see. Looks like Cam Scott, we still await the decision. No Gamecocks made it on the preseason Walter Camp Award watch list, it looks like. So, let's see. Ruination. I wish my wife looked at me the same way that Greg looks at Will Muschamp. Oh, man. Okay, listen. I ended Jake's conversation earlier. I started it earlier to give you all an extended Q&A power hour. If we don't get any calls, we're not going to make it to 3 o'clock. I'm just going to leave it at that. So, which I know y'all don't mind. Whatever, you roll with the punches. It's a Friday. We're all chilling, hanging out. We're just to the point we need football, man. Like, we need – I said it yesterday for sure. We need kickoff. I get it. I'm excited for week 0. I really am. I'm excited to just have football on TV because here's the thing. Once we get to that Saturday of week 0, like it's on because then it's game week, you know? Once we get to game week, we'll start talking about North Carolina, the matchups, the gambling aspect of week 1. We'll have games that Thursday, right? Florida, Utah, the headliner. Like once we get to week 0, that Saturday, we're golden. It's going to be a long 15 days. Long 15 days till we get to that point. Long 15 days. Okay, so it looks like Cam Scott's is deciding on YouTube. Let's see. All right, let's jump to the phone lines here.
Call from
Will from Dirty Myrtle.
Will, what's going on, man? How are you?
What's good, bro? How about you?
I'm doing fantastic, my friend. What's up?
All right, a couple of thoughts here. One is more of a statement. I think, watching your countdown, it's just, I think that Bruce Ellington doesn't get enough flowers, man. Like, that dude, I know his statistics aren't, putting him up there top 3, top 4 all time, but that man made a lot of humongous plays in a lot of humongous games for us. And I feel like when we talk about the greatest receivers to ever play at Carolina, his name never really comes up. But if you think about that little run we had, that 12 and 13 years, those years, I mean, he was as good as anybody on those teams at making those big catches in those big games. And just wanted to kind of say that. But the thought I had that I wanted to get your opinion on, do you think that the whole Luke Doty moving to wide receiver, is that more almost a little bit also making a way for Sellers to get some of those snaps that might be able to be had this year, which I know there wasn't a lot to be had last year. But if there is, do you think that's kind of more of a show of confidence by the coaching staff to want to get him some action this year so next year he is in his green, possibly?
Yeah, Will, first things first on Bruce Ellington. I do agree with you. He's a guy that, just clutch catch after clutch catch. I mean, I would rank him near the top of the most clutch wide receivers at South Carolina, undoubtedly. Speaking on the quarterback thing, I think you heard J.C. Sherbert say this as well, that, I think, number one, they want to get Luke Doty on the field and just utilize a skill set, give him a chance to make plays for South Carolina. But, certainly I think with the emergence of Lenora Sellers, you've got Tanner Bailey back there as well. I think maybe they look at it as a situation where I think if something happened early, like I think Luke Doty going into the season is going to be QB2. If something happened, he'd be the first quarterback to try it out there. But mid-season, late season, that might not be the case, right? I mean, that just might not be the case. So, I think certainly. I think certainly when you have a guy like Lenora Sellers back there that, has the ability that we feel like he does, and it sounds like he's coming along maybe even quicker than some expected, I think the possibilities of, him being ready to play quarterback, especially late in the season, I think that is one of the reasons you slide Luke Doty out because, let's face it, long term, I don't think Luke Doty ever takes a snap again under center as South Carolina's starting quarterback. I don't see it. I don't see it. I think Lenora Sellers is the guy of the future. That's how you feel. That's what you hope at least. And so if Luke Doty's going to get some playing time, it's going to have to be somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that if they weren't as confident in Sellers, because I think it's Sellers. I mean, it could be a list of a couple of guys, but I think we all think that that's the next guy. And I feel like if they didn't have that confidence in him, they wouldn't be as quick to slide Luke over because, like you said, if something does happen, he's going to be quarterback too, which he probably still is, like you said, at the beginning of the season. But being in the wide receiver group, there's a lot more contact as far as you're going to get hit more. You know what I'm saying? Which I don't think he's going to play a whole lot of wide receiver either. I mean, if you think about it, who's he going to beat out to get? He ain't getting in the top 4, I don't feel like. I mean, he can still see the field, but it's almost like one of those moves that they're doing and you're hearing about, but I don't know if you're actually going to see a lot of it on the field, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I feel the same way, man. I mean, listen, we hear about stuff like this, rumors all the time. I mean, that's why I say I take it all with a grain of salt when it comes to, fall camp reports and what's going on with that. But you never know. I mean, and I think the point JC made was what you really take away from it is like if Luke Doty's playing receiver, it's not because South Carolina does not have bodies. It's because he's really turned into a really, really good wide receiver.
Which I have to see, I guess. He hadn't played a whole lot of that in his career, even in high school.
Yeah.
He played a little bit, but I mean, he is a great athlete.
Yeah.
And for being from Myrtle, I'm pulling for him, but it's just, hearing that, I guess my first thought was that's a good look for sellers because that's showing a little bit like, hey, like we can move him over to wide receiver if need be. We got this guy kind of thing. But anyway, yeah, man, the days are dragging on, dude. Let's just get to it already, right? Like,
Yeah.
fuck.
Yeah.
But anyway, brother, when does the simulation start? Sunday again?
Yeah, Sunday at 7. We'll do Sunday at 7, Monday at 7, and then Tuesday at 7 o'clock. So yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. Those are always a blast.
Yeah, man. It's something to hold me over for a little bit at least.
Yeah.
Anyway, bro. All right, brother. I'll talk to you later.
All right, man. Be good, Will. Appreciate you. Will from Dirty Myrtle. Always a pleasure to hear from him. Great stuff. Has Cam Scott committed yet? That is my question. Has Cam Scott committed yet? I tell you this. I see Bruin Nation commenting all the time about Lenora Sellers. If Lenora Sellers comes in and struggles, I know who I'm going to be able to find in the comments defending Lenora Sellers. It'll be Bruin Nation because, hey, no player is immune to it. He comes in, throws a couple picks. He stinks. I know that Bruin Nation will be there defending him. I know Bruin Nation will be there. I'm not saying, obviously, you should do that. I'm just saying I know Bruin Nation will be there no matter what. Let's jump to the line.
Call from
Peyton.
Peyton, what's up, man? How are you?
Good. How about yourself, Chris? What's going on, man?
I am doing fantastic, my friend. Just hanging out. What's up?
So, talk a little bit about our D line a little bit. I think you talked about it yesterday. I think Tonka Hemingway is our premier guy as of right now. I think he's the guy that we're going to be looking for a big impact from. My question to you is this: if you had to put a number on it, how many sacks or tackles for loss would you say he would need to have to take, quote, that next step?
Yeah, I mean, you look at last year, man. He had 8 tackles for loss and 4 sacks. I mean, he had a really good season. I think if he can get to double digits in tackles for loss and get to, sacks for a D tackle are kind of hard to come by. I mean, if he got to 6 or more,
right?
I think that would be, I think that'd be a really, really high quality season for him.
Yeah, 100%. I think if we can, me and you talked about it a little bit yesterday. I don't think the pressure up the middle is going to be so crucial week one. I think the pressure coming off of the edge is going to be the difference maker.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, man, it's just as a D tackle, man. Unless you're Aaron freaking Donald, you're not really gonna, or JJ Watt, you're not gonna have that many sacks as a DM because there's too much traffic, man. It's hard, but I think maybe not so much as a sack pass rusher guy. I think he can serve more effectively maybe as a run stuffer, man, because that's been a really, really huge problem for us as you pointed out over the past 6-7 years. We haven't finished outside or inside of the top 100 in rush defense in quite a long time. So I think we can utilize them as a run stopper as well.
Yeah, no doubt. We need all 11 for sure. And I know we were specifically talking defensive line today, yesterday, what have you. But we'll get into linebackers next week. We'll get into secondary. And, when I asked Beamer about that at SEC Media Days again, he pointed that out. It takes all 11 guys to stop the run, to generate a push. And, but it's got to be better. I mean, everybody's got to be better. It's for the amount of talent that South Carolina has brought in on the defensive front, it's been kind of inexcusable, really, to see how porous they've been against the run. So,
yeah, and I mean, like you said, I mean, it's been pretty underwhelming considering the talent that we've had come through. Jordan Burke, Zach Pickens, that they were solid guys, but they never really lived up to the hype that they had coming out of high school or at the time of signing. Mm-hmm. I hope we can build off of that or build on maybe potentially being a solid, having a more solid group up front, guys that you can rely on to make, not necessarily big play after big play, just making consistent plays, man, making it consistently more difficult on teams as far as running the ball. And that just, it's a big part of concern. But anyway, man, I was just calling in to talk a little bit about Hemingway and rush defense and that kind of stuff. So I'll go ahead and get off of here, man. I appreciate you answering, Chris. Thanks for his up show, man. Go Cox, buddy.
Peyton, I appreciate the call, my man. Always a pleasure. Great stuff as always. And, yeah, man, listen, I echo everything that Peyton just said. So, echo everything Peyton just said. Breaking news, Cam Scott officially picks the Texas Longhorns. He is headed to Austin. I mean, at least he's out of the SEC, I guess. But in-state kid from Lexington has committed to Texas. So, there you have it. There you have it. I say he's out. I say he's outside of the SEC. Not really, though. Texas joins next year. So, yeah, he will very much so be in the SEC, and it'll be somebody the Gamecocks will play at some point, I'd imagine. So, anyways, I mean, I don't know if South Carolina was really ever the favorite for him. But obviously sucks to lose a guy out of your backyard. And heads of Texas. So, I mean, it is what it is. It is what it is. And that's kind of the story of Gamecocks men's basketball. That's kind of the story, man, just losing those big in-state guys. So, Texas it is. He's out of the SEC this season. But he will not play this season because he will not be enrolled yet. So he will be in the SEC next year. But, yeah, it's tough. It's tough. The homie Lamont not cooking, Brendan M. So, not cooking. Just always sucks to lose a guy like that to out of your backyard. It's tough. Anyways, guys, 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377 here on this Friday, August the 11th. Yep, here it is, Sports Talk. The state's top basketball recruit in the 2024 cycle, 6'6", Cam Scott of Lexington Friday, committed to Texas. Picked Texas over South Carolina, Bama, Auburn, Oregon, and Ole Miss. Sports Talk SC says the miss is a significant one for USC coach Lamont Paris and staff who put great effort into recruiting the hometown standout. Much of the way in the recruiting saga, it appeared the Gamecocks had the inside track, but Scott was also strong on Texas, despite the turmoil in the program last season that led to the departure of head coach Chris Beard. His assistant at the time, Rodney Terry, has been recruiting Scott, and they built a strong relationship. Terry is now the head coach of the Longhorns. With Scott out of the picture, Paris will focus on other prospects he's offered for the 2024 class. Those include 6'4", KJ Green, 6'2", Elijah Crawford, 6'7", Darian Reed, 6'9", Sammy Yanay, 6'4", Bishop Boswell, and 6'7", Trent Noah. So, a swing and a miss for Lamont Paris on the recruiting trail, but what's new? South Carolina losing those big-time in-state prospects is nothing that we're really not all that used to. He wasn't a take. He wasn't a take indeed. Indeed. Guys, let's jump into the break on the side. We'll keep the conversation rolling. Your questions, comments, calls, and more. You're tuned in to The Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. Daily Crow is also sponsored by Rhine Law Firm, LLC, principally managed by James R. Rhine Jr., located at 1350 Ashley River Road, Suite 650, Charleston, South Carolina, 29407, serving the greater Charleston area.
Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Friday, August the 11th, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Hope you're having a fantastic start to your weekend. Again, guys, in case you missed it, Cam Scott indeed chooses the Texas Longhorns. Committing to Texas is what it is. John Edwards says, not the first in-state guy to leave South Carolina. Zion Williamson, John Morant to name a couple. They did indeed. Doesn't make it any sweeter. Doesn't make it any sweeter, my guy. Doesn't make it any sweeter. Michael Lynn, where do you think Spencer Rattler ranks among SEC quarterbacks? Yeah, I've got him ranked. I believe my quarterback rankings, I had him fourth. I believe I had him fourth in my rankings, Michael. You know, I think that going into the season, I think Spencer Rattler should be considered a top 5 quarterback. You know, where does he finish? We'll see. I think Spencer Rattler's got very, very high potential to be a really good player. I mean, I liked what Connor O'Gara said, that I don't think South Carolina fans should have these unfair expectations like he's turned some massive corner because of the end of last season. Like, I think Spencer Rattler is who he is. He's a gunslinger, and you just hope there's more good moments than there are bad. But, you know, you got to live with some of that bad to get all the good that he gives you. So, yeah. I would rank him fourth on my list. CCM says grits or hash browns. Hash browns 1,000%. I do love grits, but hash browns 1,000%, my man, for sure. Michael, will he throw 7 interceptions against Mizzou? Michael, hope not. I certainly hope not. I hope not, my friend. I hope not. Yeah, Michael, I'd love to see South Carolina switch to Nike. I'm not a huge Under Armour guy. I mean, I like, it doesn't bother me that Carolina rocks Under Armour, but I'd be more than happy to get off of Under Armour. So, I mean, we've had it for 16 years. Like, let's try something different. I mean, all the best teams in college football, they have Nike. Like, they do. They do. They have Nike. So, it's so funny, though. I rehash my September predictions on the timeline, and people are going crazy. And it's like, I literally have my season predictions pinned to the top of our feed. Like people act surprised that I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know. But hey, beauty's in the banter, man. I hope South Carolina starts 5-0. I really do. I hope they start 5-0, guys. I'd love nothing more than that. Anyways, guys, 843-790-3377. Chase Warren, any updates on the unis for this year? I think we're sticking with the same things, Chase. If we were getting new unis, I think it would have happened. CCM would be dope if we were all black and UNC was all white for the game. I know the game's at night. I still don't think, though, with the heat, they're going to want to go all black. But the game is at night, so, I mean, it could work. It could work. Marion R., Zaxby's or Raising Canes? I'm going Raising Canes, my friend. Raising Canes. KFC, we need to wear all white in Charlotte so our guys don't die from heat. Indeed. Let's see. Mike Gillespie, our good friend from ABC Columbia, asked Shane Beamer, what keeps him up at night with this team besides a lot after all he's SEC football coach? What keeps him up? Youth. Carolina's expected to play a ton of freshmen this season, but that can also be incredibly beneficial for the foundation of the program. How about that? Let's jump to the phone lines here.
Call from
John Rice, Chick-fil-A Hall of Famer.
John, what's up, man? Chick-fil-A Hall of Famer. I love it. What's going on?
What's up, dude? I'm just sitting in the office on this Friday. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I appreciate you asking. What's up?
I got a quick one for you. Then I got to get off. Then I got to get off the phone. But I want to hear what you got to say. Give me this year, this football season. Give me the one game that everyone thinks we're going to win that we could lose, and then give me the one game that everyone thinks we're going to lose that we could sneak away and win. I'm gonna hang up and listen, brother.
Appreciate you, John. Great question. That's a fantastic question. You know, John's a guy, he doesn't call in a lot, but when he does or when he comments, it's fire. What's the one game that South Carolina, Gamecock Nation, is expecting to win that the Gamecocks could lose? And then what's the one game that everybody's writing off as a loss that could be a win? I'll start with the first. I mean, to me, Mississippi State's the obvious. I know I'm picking it as a loss, but I think all of Gamecock Nation is bought in on that as a W. It should be no problem. But I'll go a different direction. Let's not go Mississippi State. The game that I think could be a loss that everyone is saying no doubt is a win. And I'm not picking this. This is just for the sake of the hypothetical. Vanderbilt. I know. I know it's blasphemous. I know it's blasphemy. I'm picking the W. I'm picking the W. But the streak's going to end at some point. It's going to end at some point, and we saw Vandy beat Florida and beat Kentucky. It's not that outrageous to think that there's going to be an upset this year. It's not that outrageous. It's not. So I'd say Vanderbilt. Obviously, I'm not picking it. I've got it as a W. South Carolina should expect to win the game, but that game could be tricky. Last time Vandy was at Willie B, they should have beaten South Carolina, so that game's tricky. The game that everyone's writing off as a loss that could be a win, John, I'd go Tennessee. I think that, you know what, maybe we're making too big of a deal of the revenge factor. You know, because at the end of the day, revenge is great. It's great for off-season storylines and talking season and motivation. But, like, once toe meets leather, the ball has been snapped, it's been kicked, whatever. Like, once the game starts, it's about playing football. All that revenge factor stuff is, you know, and I think Jake Crane has mentioned it before. The revenge factor stuff, it just makes you prepare harder. It doesn't make you play harder. It makes you prepare harder, if anything. So I think that's one that maybe, you know, most aren't giving Carolina a chance. And listen, maybe it's one of those things where Tennessee does take a step back and South Carolina was able to kind of crack the code of Tennessee and they're able to beat them. So I would go Vandy and Tennessee. I know the Vandy one won't be popular, but like that one, nobody in their right mind is picking Vandy to win. I mean, this is a team that beat Florida and Kentucky last year. I don't think it's going to happen. But you know as well as I do, John, everybody else, that streak, like the year that, let's put it this way. The year that streak ends, it's not going to make sense. Think about it. Is there ever going to be a year South Carolina comes into and you say, you know what? That Vandy game, though. I just, I don't think so. So I'd say most likely loss that everyone thinks is a win would be Vandy. Most likely win that everyone thinks will be a loss is Tennessee. And, of course, that's in the hypothetical because I picked the loss to Tennessee. I've picked the win over Vandy. But, hey, crazier things have happened in college football. Great question by our guy John Rice there. Great question. Fantastic question. That also sounds like, John, something that I'll have to ask or pose to the masses on social media because I'd be curious to hear. I mean, Mississippi State to me is the very obvious one because I've picked it as a loss and, you know, people act as if I'm insane, but, you know. You never know. I certainly will not be the guy probably at any point to pick Vandy to pull the upset going into a football season. KFC in Africa says, and I realize too how funny. I just listen. I read the usernames as is. That's literally what his username is. How about can we just beat freaking Missouri? Can we just beat Missouri indeed, my man? Trust me, that's a streak that needs to be snapped. Spur Daddy, I'm so tired of everybody saying Carolina's losing to Tennessee and Clemson because of revenge. Take your revenge and stick it. I mean, again, to your point, Spur Daddy, revenge does not play the game. I've said admittedly that, there's a Tennessee is probably the least likely swing game I look at and say least likely South Carolina gets the W, because being in Neyland, if there's one game that I expect Tennessee to show up, play well, play a complete 60 minutes, it's that one after what happened last year. Clemson, listen, I picked the loss not because I think revenge. I mean, certainly revenge will be on the mind, but I think Clemson's going to be a lot better football team this year. And I know that they still won 10 games last year, won the ACC, but I just think offensively, Clemson's going to be a lot better. I think they're going to be a lot better. I think Garrett Riley, Cade Klubnik. I'm not saying Klubnik's going to win the Heisman or anything, but in that game specifically, Carolina won't be able to bank on Clemson's quarterback going 8 for 29 again. They just won't. South Carolina's just as suspect, if not maybe even a little bit weaker on the line of scrimmage. Clemson's still elite in the trenches. Will a game occur again in which so many different things happen that swung in Carolina's favor? I know there were things that went against them too. Pick six, pick in the end zone, but the special team stuff, all of the fumbles and the turnovers, and it could happen. It very well could happen. I just think Clemson's going to be a lot better on offense. I think they're going to be so much better on offense. And they still have, Maffa. They still have Shipley. They'll be better at wide receiver. And Klubnik, again, will be an upgrade over DJU. I really believe that. So we'll see. I mean, I want to be wrong. I don't want to be right in that pick at all. But that's why I've got that one as an L. Again, guys, 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377. In case you missed it, Cam Scott has officially committed to Texas. We don't normally talk basketball recruiting this time of year. But that was a pretty significant one. Cam Scott out of Lexington, South Carolina, unfortunately will be headed to Austin to play for the Longhorns. So maybe an R26. If Clemson didn't have their flashy OC this year, would Clemson be better? Well, I think they'd be upgraded at quarterback either way. But maybe an R26. Breaking news, having a good offensive coordinator is typically a good sign that you'll be improved on the offensive side. So, I mean, that'll typically do it for you. So it helps. It helps for sure. It helps for sure. KFC says, what if we're 1-3 going into Florida? Well, KFC, we play 5 games before Florida. So, I think 2-3 is worst case. I do. South Carolina's not going to lose to UNC and Mississippi State. 3-2 is very realistic. I think 4-1 is obviously a dream start. 3-2 is most likely. If you can be 3-2, though, if you can start this season 4-2, that is a fantastic start to the year. Fantastic. Fantastic start to the year. Just weather the storm early. Weather the storm early in this season. A 3-3 or better start with 4 home games to close, games against Vandy, Jacksonville State, getting Kentucky at your house. It sets you up to get to that 7-win, 8-win mark, which would be a success in year 3 of Shane Beamer. You don't have to go 5-1 to the first 6. You don't even have to go 4-2. But you can't go worse than 3-3. A 3-3 or better start. Weather the storm over the first 6 games. And guys, slow starts have been a problem for this program under Shane Beamer. First 2 years, they've struggled out the gate. And with South Carolina playing a bunch of new faces, bunch of new guys, true freshmen at every position Shane Beamer's mentioned, they're going to be relying on youngsters, relying on portal guys. It could be a mixed bag early. If you can weather the storm, be 3-2 through your first 5. More importantly, 4-2 through your first 6. At worst case, be 3-3. You're setting yourself up much more favorable down the stretch to get to that 7-win and maybe even that 8-win mark. Let's see. Michael Lynn, biggest difference between last year and this year in the offense? I think just simplified. Guys should look more comfortable. There shouldn't be as much confusion pre-snap. We've all heard it over again that's what we'll get. But, we're really not going to know what the offense looks like, guys, until toe meets leather and the season begins. And we get a glimpse of this offense because they're not reinventing the offense, obviously. They're not reinventing the offense. It's going to be very similar to last year in some ways. But the way it's presented, the overall execution, playmakers actually touching the football, I think that'll be the biggest difference. Some Wildcat in the red zone too. CCM, we could see that. We could most certainly see that. Guys, we're going to jump into one final break. On the side, we'll close this thing out with your questions, your comments, your calls, and more. You're tuned in to The Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. Daily Crow is also sponsored by Rhine Law Firm, LLC, principally managed by James R. Rhine Jr., located at 1350 Ashley River Road, Suite 650, Charleston, South Carolina, 29407, serving the greater Charleston area.
Marshall Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Friday, August the 11th, 2023. 7 minutes to go before we head into the weekend. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Been a lot of fun hanging out with you guys today. It appears Trey Knox is expected to be ready for the season opener. So good news on the Trey Knox front. I would say wrap him in bubble wrap and keep him safe until that game, and don't ask too much of him. You know what I mean? Just take care of your guys. Make sure your top guys are ready to go for the season opener. Mm, 843-790-3377. That is 843-790-3377. Kickoff is just around the corner, ladies and gents. Just around the corner. Very excited for it. Let's jump to the phone lines here.
Call from
Michael.
Michael, what's up, man? How are you?
Hey, Chris. Doing well, bud. Hope you've had a great week, man.
I appreciate it. Same to you, my friend. What's going on?
Hey, usually I don't get a chance to call in much. Usually I agree with all your points, but there's one thing I've been struggling with here recently to kind of wrap my mind around. Goes back to your conversation, I guess, yesterday with Mark Ryan at the end of the conversation. You guys were talking about the benefits versus, I guess, the downsides of Clemson possibly joining the SEC. So my buddies and I have been talking about this here recently with all the conference realignment stuff going on. And the part I'm having trouble with is I've always had the stance of bring Clemson on, bring them on to the SEC, let them actually have to play a real schedule. They've actually got to play some real competition. I mean, they've got a cupcake walk to the playoffs every year playing the ACC and playing no competition. They don't play the most competitive physical teams yet, so they don't have as many injuries and such. Of course, 14 playoff, ACC, cakewalk into the playoffs. I know we're expanding to 12, but I'm to the point where it's like, if it's 12, if they're in the SEC, sure, they can lose a couple and possibly still make the playoffs. But to the conversation of they're going to get our extra money, the $30 extra million that we get in the SEC, I just like nobody beats their chest on we've got more money than Clemson, therefore we're the better program, we've got a better football operation thing going on. Nobody's excited about that. I care about wins and losses. I would rather be Clemson rich as crap and not winning any championships versus them being not as much money and have a trophy case more full of national championships. That's the part I'm having trouble understanding on. What's your thoughts?
You know, you make very good points, and that was why a couple months ago for me. I mean, I go back and forth on it. You know what I mean? I think there's pros and cons to both of them, you know, not being in the SEC or maybe one day potentially being in the SEC. And, you know, to your point, man, I mean, I would love to see Clemson have to play an SEC schedule. And, you know, I think that probably wouldn't be quite the cakewalk to a conference title or a college ball playoff bid, you know, potentially as it is in the ACC. So I definitely see that vantage point. I'm the same way. It's like, hey, bring it on. Let's just add another layer of emphasis to the rivalry. Not that it needs any, but like, why not just do that? I mean, Alabama and Auburn play each other every year, and it works out just fine. You know, at the same time, on the flip side, and, you know, money is what drives recruiting and facilities, and with NIL going on and what have you, it's why give Clemson that boost, I guess. But then again, I go back to your point. I mean, Carolina having the SEC advantage hasn't quite done much of anything for them over the last decade or so, and Clemson's run away with winning national titles, and they found a way to make it work without the $30 million or what have you. So is it really all that much of an advantage? So I don't know if there's really a perfect answer. You know, if Clemson were to join the SEC, I'm not going to sit here and cry about it and, hey, bring it on like you mentioned. But if they stay in the ACC, I'm not going to be all that upset either. It's, you know, if they've got to be on the outside looking in. But, you know, I think the reality is this. I think they probably will at some point join the SEC, whether you like it or not, because them and Florida State, they're like SEC teams in the ACC anyways. I mean, they got humongous stadiums. They generate revenue. They win at a high level. I mean, I think it's probably going to happen. It's not a matter of if, just a matter of when. So I definitely hear your points, and, you know, I think there's a fair argument for all of them.
Yeah, agree. And I understand your points on both sides. I think you make really good points on it. I'm really trying to understand the other side of it as well. My biggest thing is it's like we've got the SEC thing we can throw out there. We got all the extra money that the program has. I don't know. We're not paying these best recruits to come here, but it's not helped us in terms of winning, which at the end of the day, all that matters. So, but yeah, I think in the end, I do think they will end up joining the SEC sometime in the near future. I think it makes the most sense. And then bring it on. You got to beat the best competition in the regular season. Then I think you're going to have to beat 3 or 4 really good quality teams to actually win in the end. And I think that's much harder for them to do than it is go through an easy schedule and then only have to win 2 really good games at the end. So anyway, have a good weekend, man.
I appreciate the call, Michael. Thank you so much. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, bud.
Take care. Great stuff. That was a great call, and there you go. Really, really good stuff there. And yeah, I mean, listen, there's pros and cons to both sides, right? About Clemson joining the SEC one day or not. And I definitely understand again, I look at it from the competitor side. Like, they come in the SEC, bring it on. Carolina Clemson's going to happen either way. And I know we all would love to see Clemson have to go through an SEC schedule and get beat up a little bit and have to deal with that. But on the other side, it's nice for them to not have that boost. I mean, there's a reason that Clemson wants to be out of the ACC, right? There's a reason why they want more money. There's a reason why they want the status of, being in the conference. I mean, can you imagine SEC media days and, having Clemson at the event, like, all kinds of things. So, can you imagine the potential of Clemson possibly winning an SEC championship before South Carolina? Can you fathom that possibility? Boy, we would never hear the end of that. So there are pros and cons to both sides of the argument. Guys, hey, we've hit 3 o'clock, an electric show today. I put it on you guys. I asked you to carry the wave with, your questions, your comments, what have you, and you did so. Thank you so much. Luke RJ says, Chris, honest thoughts on the band, homies. They can engage in slapdickery a time or two, Luke RJ. They tend to be slapdicks, but every now and then there's some good traits of them as well. So, no, I'm kidding. Our guy Brendan M, the signature band homie in the Big Cock Club Discord. We love Brendan. So, anyways, guys, make sure on YouTube you hit that subscribe button, hit that bell icon so you get notifications of when we go live, when we drop new video content. Also, of course, subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. Guys, we're getting closer. Just 2 more weekends. 3. 3 more weekends. 2 more weekends to week 0. 3 more Saturdays. 3 more weekends. Hey, 3 weeks from today, we're going to be signing off, going into kickoff in Charlotte. Cannot wait. Guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much. Have a fantastic weekend, and we will talk to you all on Monday.